The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Ethan Collins made his way through the gleaming hallways of Reynolds Media Corporation. His footsteps echoed against marble floors, while his mind raced with the weight of student loans and family responsibilities. The stack of documents in his hands felt heavier than their actual weight, much like the secrets he carried. He paused outside Lawrence Reynolds' office, the CEO's sanctuary of glass and mahogany. The door stood slightly ajar. Through the crack, Ethan saw something that made his blood freeze. Lawrence Reynolds, the media mogul known for his ruthless business tactics, was signing, not documents, but American Sign Language. His hands moved with the fluid grace of someone who had been signing for years. "I'm sorry, Sarah," Lawrence signed, unaware of being observed. Ethan backed away, mind reeling. Lawrence Reynolds had never once acknowledged knowing ASL during diversity meetings. Why hide such a skill? Why apologize to someone named Sarah when alone? Back at his cubicle, Ethan stared at his computer screen. The accessibility compliance reports opened before him. Something seemed off about the numbers. Dates altered, percentages shifted, small changes, easily missed by anyone not looking closely. That evening, Ethan returned to his family's modest Astoria home. The familiar scent of his mother's cooking filled the air, mingling with the lingering incense from Sunday Mass. His father's firefighter uniform hung by the door, a symbol of traditional values and expectations Ethan couldn't fulfill. "How's my college graduate doing at that fancy Manhattan job?" Dr. Patricia Caldes asked. Medical scrubs exchanged for an apron, her eyes sharp with unasked questions about why Ethan never brought girls home. "It's fine, Mom," Ethan replied, guilt gnawing at him for the half-truth. The same guilt that followed him to church each Sunday, sitting beside his parents while hiding who he truly was. Upstairs, he found Connor adjusting his hearing aids. At 16, his brother possessed a brilliance and independence that made Ethan both proud and worried. "These things are acting up again," Connor sighed, frustration evident in his voice. "And don't give me that look. I'm not your inspiration porn." "I know you're not," Ethan replied, thinking about the part-time interpreting jobs he took to help with Connor's medical expenses. $80,000 in student loans be damned. The next day, tension permeated the Reynolds Media office. Jennifer Martinez, the lead ASL interpreter, watched Ethan with suspicious eyes. Sam Chen from IT offered a sympathetic smile while Bradley Stevens, a senior executive, glared from across the room. Bradley's self-hatred manifested as hostility toward Ethan, a mirror he couldn't bear to face. Then Marcus Rodriguez arrived. Not the startup entrepreneur Ethan had expected, but a formidable disability rights attorney. Through the glass walls of the conference room, Ethan watched Lawrence and Marcus engage in heated conversation. The pieces began falling into place. The altered reports, Lawrence's hidden signing skills, and now a prominent lawyer specializing in ADA violations. Reynolds Media's progressive facade suddenly seemed paper thin, and Ethan stood at the edge of uncovering something that could change everything for the company, for his family, and for himself. What would you do if discovering the truth meant risking everything you've worked for? Follow Ethan's journey on Heart Stories, where we explore the courage to stand up when staying silent feels safer. The Reynolds Media lobby gleamed with artificial perfection as Marcus Rodriguez approached the reception desk. Ethan watched Jessica, the receptionist, struggle to communicate with Marcus, who repeatedly requested an interpreter. What appeared to be a frustrating miscommunication slowly revealed itself as something more calculated. Marcus was recording the interaction, methodically documenting the company's failure to provide basic accessibility. Ethan stepped forward, offering his services. Marcus accepted with a grateful smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. As they walked toward the conference room, Ethan felt Lawrence Reynolds' gaze following them, not with surprise, but with the calculated assessment of a chess player watching a planned move unfold. This encounter had been orchestrated. During the following weeks, Ethan's role as interpreter granted him access to restricted meetings. In one such session, locked away with the legal team, Lawrence discussed strategies to counter Marcus's investigation. The words Ethan translated left an ashen taste in his mouth evidence adjustment, witness management, and financial incentives for cooperation. He wasn't just interpreting business strategy, he was translating plans to silence people. Through fragmented conversations and confidential documents, a heartbreaking truth emerged. Sarah Reynolds, Lawrence's daughter, had worked for her father's company. Deaf from birth, she had faced systematic workplace harassment, particularly from Bradley Stevens. 18 months ago, after being passed over for a promotion she had earned, Sarah took her own life. Lawrence, woman, consumed by grief and fear of stock price implications, had covered up the circumstances surrounding her death. At home, pressure mounted as Connor's hearing aids malfunctioned completely. The insurance denied coverage for replacements, citing policy limitations. Ethan's mother suggested dinner with that lovely O'Brien girl from church, while his father spoke of family legacy with pointed references to grandchildren. The weight of his closeted identity became nearly unbearable when Father Murphy delivered a sermon about choosing natural relationships over modern confusion. Adding to his turmoil, Kevin, Ethan's manipulative ex-boyfriend, reappeared with carefully crafted apologies and promises of change. Each text message pulled at old wounds that had never properly healed. Bradley Stevens launched his campaign of destruction with surgical precision. Whispers about Ethan's relationship with Connor spread through the office. Innocent brotherly care twisted into something inappropriate. Questions about his qualifications emerged. How can someone who isn't even deaf properly represent our clients? Anonymous complaints about his interpreting accuracy appeared in his personnel file. The underlying message was clear. Can we trust someone who lies about who he really is? The moral crossroads arrived without warning. Marcus approached Ethan after hours, his lawyer persona replaced by the determined advocate. "I need your help to expose what's happening here," Marcus said, sliding a folder across the table. "There would be compensation, of course." Ethan stared at the amount, enough to cover Connor's medical needs with money to spare. The choice before him crystallized: accept Lawrence's manipulation and protect his career, or risk everything to expose a system that had already claimed one life. Our choices rarely present themselves as clear right or wrong. Often, they arrive disguised as impossible compromises between what we need and what we know to be true. The hardest integrity to maintain isn't found in moments of strength, but in times of desperate vulnerability, when doing the right thing carries real consequences for those we love. The leather chair in Lawrence Reynolds' private office creaked as Ethan shifted uncomfortably. Across the imposing desk, Lawrence's composed exterior had cracked, revealing something raw beneath the corporate armor. Tears glistened in the CEO's eyes as he spoke about Sarah. She was brilliant. Lawrence signed while speaking aloud, his hands moving with the tenderness reserved for describing someone beloved. "So much stronger than I ever was." For a moment, Ethan believed he was witnessing genuine grief. The revelation felt like a sacred confidence, until Lawrence's expression subtly shifted. The vulnerability receded, replaced by calculated assessment. "You know why I hired you, Ethan? Not because you were the most qualified interpreter." Lawrence's words cut with surgical precision. "You make an excellent diversity prop, young, connected to the deaf community but not deaf yourself. The perfect showcase of our inclusive values." The manipulation became transparent when Lawrence mentioned Connor's medical expenses. Reynolds Media could cover those costs. "Insurance companies have so many tedious restrictions, don't they? All I need is your discretion regarding certain corporate matters." The setup for Ethan's professional downfall began the following day. He was assigned to interpret for a crucial presentation to international investors, heavy with legal terminology far beyond his expertise. Jennifer Martinez, who would normally handle such specialized content, had been mysteriously scheduled elsewhere. As technical terms and complex financial concepts flowed, Ethan faltered. His hands fumbled. Translations became approximate, then inaccurate. The executive's expressions shifted from confusion to disapproval. When he mistranslated a critical regulatory compliance statement, Bradley Stevens stepped forward with rehearsed concern. "Perhaps we should pause until we can provide proper interpretation." The humiliation burned through Ethan like acid. That evening, he returned home to catastrophe. Connor stood in the living room, face flushed with anger and hurt. Were you ever going to tell me, or was I supposed to find out by overhearing Mom and Dad arguing about your lifestyle choices? Dr. Collins appeared in the doorway, her hospital scrubs exchanged for the armor of maternal disappointment. This family has values, Ethan, faith that has sustained generations. You need to choose what matters more, this phase you're going through or your family. His father remained silent, which somehow hurt more than any words could have. The next morning, Bradley escalated his campaign. Human Resources requested an immediate meeting regarding concerns about professional conduct, an anonymous tip suggesting inappropriate behavior. By afternoon, a video of Ethan's failed interpretation circulated on social media with the caption, "Reynolds Media hiring unqualified interpreters to check diversity boxes." Salvation appeared from an unexpected quarter. Sam Chen cornered Ethan in the empty break room. "They're doing to you what they did to me," Sam whispered, sliding a flash drive across the table. "Reynolds has my medical records from before my transition. They use them when I step out of line." A pattern emerged through Sam's evidence, a systematic targeting of vulnerable employees, those with secrets, medical needs, or financial precarity, those who couldn't afford to fight back. That evening, Marcus delivered his ultimatum. "The investigation has reached a critical point. Either you help expose what's happening, or you'll be named as complicit in the cover-up." Trapped between impossible choices, Ethan sought refuge in the last place he expected, the church where his family had worshiped for generations. Father Murphy found him sitting alone in the empty sanctuary. "Your mother spoke to me," the priest said, settling beside him. "Did I ever tell you about my nephew Michael?" The story that followed, of Father Murphy's gay nephew and the priest's own journey from judgment to acceptance, offered Ethan no easy answers, but something perhaps more valuable, the understanding that faith and identity need not be mutually exclusive. Later that night, Connor appeared in his doorway. "Don't let them use my disability as an excuse for your fear," he said simply. "I never asked you to protect me at the cost of your truth." With those words, Ethan's path became clear. The price of silence had already been too high for Sarah Reynolds, for himself, and for everyone trapped in the system of compromise and coercion. The truth, with all its consequences, was the only way forward. True courage isn't the absence of fear, but the decision that something matters more than that fear. Sometimes integrity requires walking away from safety and toward the very thing that terrifies us most, the unknown consequences of standing in our truth. The conference room had transformed from a corporate showcase into a war room. Jennifer Martinez spread documents across the table, while Sam Chen encrypted communications on a modified server. Ethan watched this unlikely alliance form. Marginalized employees united by shared experiences of manipulation and discrimination. "We need secure channels," Sam explained, fingers flying across the keyboard. "Everything they can't monitor or trace back to us." Together, they developed a communication app with end-to-end encryption, allowing employees to document discrimination without exposure. The underground network grew cautiously. A custodian who'd been denied reasonable accommodations, a marketing assistant whose harassment complaints had vanished from HR records, and others whose stories echoed with painful familiarity. Jennifer leveraged her connections to bring the National Association of the Deaf into their coalition. "They've been watching Reynolds Media for years," she explained. "They just needed evidence from inside." As their case strengthened, Ethan faced the truth he'd been avoiding for years. The Sunday dinner table fell silent as he spoke words that had lived inside him for so long. "I'm gay," he said simply, "and Reynolds Media is systematically discriminating against employees with disabilities and other marginalized identities." But Collins's fork clattered against her plate. His father's expression remained unreadable. Connor reached across the table, squeezing Ethan's hand in silent support. "This isn't something you can pray away," Ethan continued, voice steadying. "And I've tried, for years. I've tried to be who you wanted instead of who I am. The days that followed brought painful conversations. His mother oscillated between denial and biblical references. His father asked questions that revealed how little he understood, but also his genuine desire to learn. The family fractured, then slowly began rebuilding around a more authentic foundation. Meanwhile, the corporate investigation deepened. Marcus filed formal complaints with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, securing whistleblower protection for Ethan and others. Sam recovered deleted emails documenting systematic discrimination, including correspondence about Sarah Reynolds, the recordings Sarah had left behind, her own documentation of workplace harassment, emerged from Lawrence's private files through an unexpected ally. Bradley Stevens, facing termination as corporate counsel sought scapegoats, reached his breaking point. They'll sacrifice anyone to protect themselves, Bradley confessed, handing over critical files. I've been part of the problem because I was terrified of being exposed myself. Rather than seeking revenge, Ethan offered understanding. Fear makes us complicit in our own oppression, he said. Breaking that cycle starts with telling the truth. In the midst of legal preparation, Ethan met David, an ASL interpreter working with the legal team from a competing media company. Their connection developed slowly, built on mutual respect rather than the desperate need that had characterized Ethan's relationship with Kevin. Connor thrived in his newfound advocacy, starting a support group for deaf teenagers navigating educational barriers. You're not responsible for fixing a broken system, he told Ethan, but we can create something better alongside it. As the press conference date approached, Ethan practiced his testimony with trembling hands. The corporate machine had begun its counteroffensive, threatening legal action, offering settlements with non-disclosure agreements, applying pressure through mutual connections. Lawrence Reynolds made one final attempt at containment, but the movement had grown beyond what one powerful man could silence. Systems of oppression survive through isolation, convincing each person that their experience is unique, their suffering individual rather than systemic. The most revolutionary act is often simply connecting our stories, revealing the patterns that power would prefer remain hidden. True change begins when private pain transforms into collective action. Camera flashes punctuated the silence as Marcus Rodriguez approached the podium, flanked by Ethan, Jennifer, Sam, and a dozen other Reynolds Media employees. Behind them stood representatives from disability rights organizations, LGBTQ+ advocacy groups, and labor unions, a coalition formed around intersecting struggles. What we are revealing today, Marcus began, is not just about one company's failure to meet accessibility standards. It is about a systematic pattern of discrimination, intimidation, and retaliation against vulnerable employees. Ethan stepped forward, heart pounding as he signed and spoke simultaneously. The testimony he delivered detailed not only accessibility violations, but the human cost of corporate negligence. As he described Sarah Reynolds' experiences, a photograph of the young woman appeared on the screen behind him. Brilliant, determined, and now forever silenced. Within hours, #Reynolds Media truth dominated social media. The company's stock plummeted as investors scrambled to distance themselves from the scandal. Death threats arrived in Ethan's inbox while protesters gathered outside his family home in Astoria. The Collins family retreated to a hotel as journalists camped on their doorstep. Then came the moment no one had anticipated. Lawrence Reynolds called a separate press conference. Ashen-faced and without his usual phalanx of attorneys, he stepped before the cameras. 18 months ago, my daughter Sarah took her own life, he began, voice breaking. As her father, I failed to protect her. As CEO, I perpetuated the very system that harmed her. There is no justification for what I've done. Lawrence resigned effective immediately, announcing the donation of his personal fortune to a foundation for workplace accessibility. Instead of fighting the charges, he provided testimony that strengthened the prosecution's case. The corporate transformation began under interim CEO Diana Chen, a prominent disability rights advocate appointed by the board in a desperate bid for redemption. She established an accessibility officer position with executive authority, implemented mandatory bias training designed by affected communities, and created a multi-million-dollar settlement fund for employees who had suffered discrimination. Ethan declined the director of inclusion position offered to him, choosing instead a consulting role that preserved his independence. "Systems don't change overnight," he explained to Connor as they walked through Gallaudet University's campus during orientation, "and I need to be free to challenge them when necessary." Their parents attended the campus tour, Dr. Collins asking thoughtful questions about accommodations, while James Collins proudly wore a Gallaudet Dad t-shirt. Their evolution hadn't been instantaneous or perfect, but their love had proven stronger than dogma. Ethan's relationship with David deepened gradually, built on shared values rather than desperate attachment. Student loans still required monthly payments, and therapy sessions helped address years of internalized homophobia and religious trauma. Progress wasn't a fairy tale ending, but an ongoing journey of healing and growth. 6 months after the initial press conference, Ethan testified before a congressional committee on accessibility legislation. Connor sat beside him, interpreting his brother's testimony with fierce pride. An empty chair marked with Sarah Reynolds' name stood as silent witness to the cost of silence and the power of speaking truth. As Ethan looked across the faces of the next generation of advocates inspired by their stand, he realized that courage isn't a single heroic moment, but a daily choice to live authentically despite the cost. What truth in your life deserves to be spoken? What change might begin with your voice? Share your thoughts in the comments. And subscribe to Heart Stories for more narratives that explore the complexity of finding courage in a world that often rewards silence.